It began with the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. Anti-war movements mainly began on college campuses. The Students for a Democratic Society organized teach-ins to express their opinion. In December of 1965, a group of students, including John F. Tinker, Mary Beth Tinker, and Christopher Eckert, and some adults met at the Eckert House. John was 15, Mary was 13, and Christopher was 16. They spoke about how they can show their opinions against the Vietnam War. They decided to wear black armbands during the holiday season and fast on December 16th and New Year's Eve. The principals of the Des Moines schools heard about the armband plan. The principals adopted a policy that students would be asked to remove their bands, and if they refused, would be suspended until they could return without it. A former student of the school district had died in Vietnam. Some of his friends were still in school, and the principals were afraid that any demonstration might evolve into something difficult to control. The school district thought that schools weren't the place for demonstrations. Aware of this policy, Mary Beth and Christopher wore their bands on December 16th, and John wore his on December 17th. All three were sent home and didn't return until after New Year's Day, which is when the planned period to wear the bands was over. The petitioners' fathers filed a complaint in the United States District Court under Section 1983 of Title 42 of the United States Code. It sought for normal damages and an injunction restraining the respondent school officials and the members of the board of directors of the school district from disciplining the petitioners. The district court dismissed the complaint after a hearing. It upheld the constitutionality of the school authorities' action on the ground that it was reasonable in order to prevent disturbance in the schools. The question was, does prohibiting the wearing of armbands in public schools as a form of symbolic protest violate the students' freedom of speech protections guaranteed by the First Amendment? The United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit held in a similar case, Burnside v. Byers, that the wearing of symbols like armbands cannot be prohibited unless it materially and substantially interferes with the requirements of appropriate discipline in the operation of the school. The court referred to but expressly declined to follow the ruling. On appeal, the Court of Appeals for the Eighth Circuit considered the case before all judges. The court was equally divided, and the district's court decision was accordingly affirmed without opinion. The problem of the case did not relate to regulation of the lengths of skirts, type of clothing, or hairstyle. It does not concern aggressive, disruptive action or even group demonstrations. The school principals punished students for a silent, passive expression of opinion. There is no evidence that the armbands interfered with the school's work, rights of other students to be secure and to be left alone, and there was no classroom disruption. Out of the 18,000 students in the school system, only a few wore black armbands and only 5 students were suspended. The school district's actions evidently stemmed from a fear of possible disruption rather than any actual interference. The Supreme Court, in a vote 7-2 in favor of the Tinkers, declared that the symbolic act of wearing armbands for the purpose of expressing certain views is within the free speech clause of the First Amendment. Justice Abe Fortas, who wrote the majority ruling, stated that students shed their constitutional rights of freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. For future cases, students, teachers, and principals need to be able to provide a just reason for the regulation of freedom of expression for students. Tinker v. Des Moines is one of the most important First Amendment cases for public school students. This case's legacy will live on by being used as a reference for any other public school First Amendment cases.